Hello, I'm Bree coming to you from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. We're here to examine the economic meltdown. And with us is independent candidate for president, Ralph Nader. Ralph, you're known as a car guy. So why the foray into the Wall Street debacle? I mean, a lot of experts have their heads wrapped around this. Why you?
Well, before I was known as a car guy, I was known as a corporate crime enforcement guy. And I've always, since I was young, very concerned about the corporate excessive influence over our government, going back decades, the robber barons, the late 19th century. And I don't think we've ever seen anything as bad as this. This is a real takeover of the U.S. Treasury, of the White House, the Pentagon, almost every department and agency. Now they want a $700 billion bailout without any congressional hearings exploring all these things and seeing, A, is it necessary? B, if it is necessary, what kind? Who's going to benefit? Is it going to be the small investor or the fat cat speculators in Wall Street? It's a power grab of historic proportions. And I think it involves the White House trying to rip up the Constitution from Congress, take away its authority, put it in the White House so they can do whatever they want with $700 billion of taxpayers' money.
There's some history here. If you look at the S&L situation through the 80s, this is, on a much larger scale, similar.
Much larger. It's not only similar, but it's massively bigger in all kinds of ways. The S&L bailout involved a lot of hearings. There was deliberation. This is like a, ram it through, quick, before you adjourn and go back home for the elections. And it's very dictatorial, very, very dictatorial.
Do you think the American public will stand for this?
Well, the signs are that they're getting upset, and regardless of their political persuasions, they're starting to march. They're calling into C-SPAN. They're calling into talk radio. I know I was recently up on Capitol Hill, and they're getting thousands of emails. I think it really is a test. Are members of Congress going to be more afraid of the people when they go back home, or more afraid of the corporations and their political allies in the White House? If it's the former, there's not going to be this blank check for $700 billion. The government is going to support any part of the economy. It should support FDIC and all the other insurance agencies that's set up by the U.S. government to protect the small savers, the small depositors, the small investors. These are the prudent people who are now at risk. You save the prudent people before you spend $700 billion trying to bail out the giant investment banks and insurance companies in this country.
Have the Democrats a better plan for this bailout than the Republicans, or are they both so flawed they can't possibly fly?
Well, Democrats may have a better plan among the better Democrats, but it's not going to overcome Bush's stubbornness, and he's backed by Wall Street power, and the Treasury Department is run by a former Goldman Sachs head in Wall Street, and it's not going to. It's either going to go through the way Bush wants it, with a little curlicues and a couple of reporting requirements, maybe a little phony cap on executive compensation, but it's not going to go through with real taxpayer participation to recover. If these companies become profitable, they can recover what the taxpayers' investment and maybe then some. I don't think that's going to go through. And definitely they're not going to have comprehensive re-regulation of the financial industry. And it was deregulation under Clinton in 1999 that started this open sesame, anything goes with other people's money.
If what's being proposed is a true compromise in Congress between Republicans and Democrats, isn't it the right thing to go ahead and do something right now?
Well, that's like saying, don't we have to bail out the people who created the problem? We don't have to bail them out. We have to support the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which guarantees the first $100,000 of people's savings in bank after bank. There's something called the SPIC that supports people's investments if they're in a brokerage firm, and the brokerage firm is so reckless that it dissipates their investment. All these are underfunded. So any bailout plan should protect the prudent and the safe investors who are at risk because of the crooks and the speculators. You don't start at the other end and try to bail out the speculators. And if you're going to bail out anybody, you have to have comprehensive regulation so it never happens again. You have to have taxpayer participation so taxpayer can get paid back in case these companies recover. You got to have full disclosure, and you got to have more power to the shareholders to control the company and the bosses of the company they own. If shareholders like mutual funds and pension funds had that kind of authority, which they don't have now, these bosses would never have gotten away with destabilizing and tanking their own company to elevate their own bonuses and huge compensation packages.